Happy Friday, lovies. So I had recorded my intros and outros to this video, only to have sat down to edit and discovered that they are all in slow motion. So obviously I'm already at work, and that means that I don't have my camera set up, but I wanted to get this video up and out because I'm planning to participate in Vlogmas this year. And Sunday is the 1st of December, and I wanted to post my first Vlogmas video on Sunday. And so out of necessity, I have chosen to record this intro on my phone instead. Now, it is Friday, it is Black Friday, Small Business Friday, or in my case, a regular old working Friday. But if you happen to be shopping, then I would definitely encourage you and appreciate if you would consider using my affiliate links. Now, I am a Love Notions ambassador, and today's Feature Friday pattern is the Encore skirt, which looks like this. Now, I have made this skirt twice. I've made it once in, I think it is a blue twill, and a second time in like a camouflage fabric. These skirts both get good rotation in my closet, and I think this would be a good one to add to your wardrobe. Now, if you agree, then be sure to use my code BLK45 and save yourself 10% off today's Feature Friday pattern. Now, Love Notions is not having a regular Black Friday sale as a lot of the companies are having. They already had their 40% off annual sale. But in the event that you still wanted to shop their patterns, then I would definitely love if you would consider using my code. Now, the second code I have for you is from Your Color Guru. Now, I am a Your Color Guru ambassador because I had my colors done, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. And I found the experience to be invaluable, and the information has been very, very useful for me, especially in terms of like buying fabrics and that sort of thing. Now, if you have been eyeing up a color consultation, now would be the best time to go ahead and do it. Know that they're having this sale. So they're having 10% off their packages, and you can stack my affiliate code, which is on social, to save yourself an additional 10% off the packages. So you can save yourself a total of 20% off any Your Color Guru packages, and they also have a couple of bonus promotions going on as well that you might want to consider checking out. Now, the last link I have for you is my Amazon influencer link. Now, I love Amazon, you guys. It is my one-stop shop. So if you happen to be shopping Amazon today, then please consider clicking on the link in the description box to lead you to my Amazon storefront. You do not have to buy anything in particular from my storefront, but if you shop through this affiliate link, then I could earn myself a small commission. Now that that is out of the way, let us get into the crux of today's video. This is part 4, the final part of the Stitch by Stitch series featuring the Grainline Archer button-down shirt. You guys, this one has been long in terms of recording and editing, but we have finally made it to the final part. Now, if you have enjoyed this video series, please let me know in the comment section down below so that I can decide whether I should be incorporating more of this type of video into my content creation calendar. Now, if you have missed parts 1, 2, and 3, I'll leave the links down below in the description box. And without further ado, let's get into part 4. Now, for my hem, I think I'm going to run my serger right the way around my hemline. That is a good indication for me of a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The way my serger needles are set up, I am using a 3-thread overlock stitch. I find that that is just giving me a 1/4 inch between the edge of the serger threads and the loopers. So I like to use that as my indication of a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to turn my sleeve placket. This was the second fold line, so that it's right sides facing one another against that second fold line. The first fold line, which is this one, is still going to be pressed wrong sides together. And then I'm going to stitch from the center front of my shirt just to the edge of my placket using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, taking care to backstitch both at the beginning and at the end. Alright my loves, so you're probably wondering what is going on. I'm in a completely different spot now, and you're looking at Christina, my dress form, instead of my cutting table. So what happened was my ring light broke. Just as I was getting ready to go and film the hemming of this shirt, pop went my ring light. So it's just a matter of wear and tear. I think is it called a gimbal? The part that rotates to allow the ring light to move up and down. It just snapped off, you guys, and so I have no ring light, and I'm being forced to hold my camera in my hand just so I can show you where we've gotten to. Now this is going to make recording the hemming of this shirt impossible. So I'm just going to try and explain what we need to do. So this was my shirt. I did turn it right sides together and I sewed a 1/4 inch just across the placket. I'm going to go ahead now and trim my placket, and that will allow me, trying to do it with one hand, to turn my placket to the inside like so. Obviously we will trim it and then poke it out, and then I want to hem using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I already went and finished off my hem with my serger, and then I just turned it up twice in order to get the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to take this to my machine and I am going to top stitch from the outside. Now I'm going to repeat, if you're not comfortable with top stitching from the outside, you can always make the decision to edge stitch your shirt from the inside. So I'm really sorry that I'm not able to show you guys this part a little bit more clearly, but these things happen. I can tell you for a fact that the devil is a liar. A liar. I was really getting into the groove of my sew along and I've gotten so far, and then this happened, but there really isn't anything that I can do. Now I'm going to need to get a replacement ring light. God only knows how long that is going to take to get here to my island. So I'm really hoping that that doesn't mess with my content creation. So you guys whisper a prayer for me that I can come up with a solution like really quick. Now once I finish the hem of my shirt, I'm going to need to go back in and do the buttonholes and the buttons. Again, I'm probably not going to be able to show you guys this bit, but I can say that everybody's machine is kind of different in terms of how it does buttonholes. So even if I were to show you how I'm going to do my buttonholes on my Bernina, you might find that doing it on your machine is different. Although I did want to demonstrate how I go in and mark my buttonholes, which side the buttonholes go on for a female shirt, that sort of thing. But again, we will see how I am able to finish this sew along. So really, I'm so sorry, you guys. Please forgive me. It's just really out of my control. So that is why I had to drag my dress form out here in my sewing space, because I do have my Cricut light right here, which gives me just a little bit more lighting for my camera's purposes. And so it's the best that I could do. All right, I'm going to sit at my machine now and hem my shirt. All right, so for the buttonholes in a female button-down shirt usually go on the right side of your shirt, and the buttons on the left side of your shirt. Now, if for some reason you want to switch your buttonholes to the opposite side, that is completely up to you. This is just the industry standard. So again, buttonholes usually go on the right side of the shirt. So as I'm looking at my shirt, because it's facing me, we're going to do the buttonholes on what for me appears to be my left hand side. So if I hold it up to me, however, then the buttonholes will be on the right hand side. Now on a shirt like this, the buttonholes go in a vertical position from top of the placket working its way down, as opposed to horizontally, which would go across the front of the placket. Now in terms of your buttonhole placing, the pattern does give you a guide for your buttonhole and button placing. I am going to completely ignore this guide, as I usually do, because I think it is best to make sure that one of your buttonholes is placed right between the fullest part of your bust, and then to adjust your buttonholes accordingly. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just try on my shirt over me and put a small dot right between the fullest part of my chest. Right, so I've placed a small dot right here, which indicates where the fullest part or apex of my bust is. Now that I have this as an indicator, I'm going to draw for my expandable seam gauge that looks like this. You guys, I feel like this tool is invaluable. I absolutely recommend adding one of these to your stash, and you can find this over on my Amazon store. The link is down below in the description box. Now you can expand the seam gauge to as wide as you want it to go, to the maximum, and you can, oops, push it back in the opposite direction to close the gap between your buttonholes. So I'm just going to open it up to the maximum like so. And that will give me an idea of my buttonhole placement. Now I know I want to have a buttonhole right at the apex of my bust. If I do it this way, then I'll have 2 buttons above and 1, 2, 3, let's say 4 buttons below. Now for my shirt, I meant to have a placement here on my collar stand. I'm not 100% sure yet if I'm actually going to sew the buttonhole on my collar stand, because it's very unlikely that I'm ever going to actually wear my shirt buttoned up all the way to the neckline. I might do it just for the aesthetics of it, but I don't particularly enjoy putting buttonholes into this collar stand, and so I'm not sure yet whether I want to extend my buttonhole all the way up here. Now if I did that, I would have to move my seam gauge like so, and then it would mean that the buttonhole placement is not going to fall right here at the apex of my bust. Now to fix that, I could decide to change the spacing of the buttonholes like so. This would allow me to have a buttonhole at the collar stand, and then allow me to have the buttonhole here at the apex of my bust where I want it. But then that definitely decreases the space between my buttonholes. I think maybe I should mark it this way, just in case I decided to put my buttonhole in at the collar. Yeah, I think I'm going to mark it this way. So I'm just going to use my water-soluble pen, and I'm just going to place a marking right the way across where the buttonholes will go. Now because my seam gauge isn't long enough, I'm just going to shift it down, making sure that the gauge lines up with one of my previous markings, and then I'll put in the additional markings. So now that I've done that, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 buttonholes on my main shirt and 1 up at the collar. Now that I have done that, I need to decide the distance from my center front edge. Now my placket is just about 1 inch in width, just a little bit over 1 inch in width. And so I'm going to place my buttonhole markings at 5/8 of an inch from my center front. When you're stitching the buttonhole, because it has a little bit of width, I like to go over 1/8 of an inch more than what the center front marking would be. So halfway between my placket would give me 1/2 inch, but because I know the buttonhole is going to be just about 1/8 of an inch in width, I want to go over the additional 1/8 of an inch to 5/8 of an inch from my center front. I hope that that is making sense to you. So I'm just going to grab my gridded ruler. Again, you can find this in my Amazon storefront. And I'm going to place it lining up the 5/8 of an inch mark with my center front. And then I'm going to mark vertically. Just like so. So now I've got vertical lines and I've got horizontal lines. The next step is for me to draw across my placket to form an intersection where my vertical line and my horizontal line meet, and this is where I'm going to place my needle when I go to sew my buttonholes. So I'm going to repeat the process through the whole front of my shirt, and then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and sew in my buttonholes. Now unfortunately, I cannot give you too much advice in terms of your buttonhole settings. My machine might be very different from your machine, and each machine does buttonholes quite differently. You might have a different buttonhole attachment, different settings, and so on and so forth. So just refer to your manual and follow the guide for your sewing machine for sewing the automatic buttonhole. Alternatively, you can do a manual buttonhole, or you can do a hand sewn buttonhole, but your girl does not have that kind of time or patience, and so I'm just going to take this to my machine now and sew in my buttonholes. Right, so my buttonholes have been put in, and I actually used white thread for my buttonholes, whereas I used green thread for the rest of my top stitching. I just thought that the contrast would have been nice with the buttonholes in white. Because I'm going to use these green buttons, as my buttons. So this green button on top this white buttonhole with the white stripes, I just thought would carry it off quite nicely. Obviously, you can decide to do your buttonholes in the same color as the rest of your top stitching if you would prefer. Now I've put in all the buttonholes down my center front and they went in seamlessly, you guys. Thank the buttonhole gods for that. I did not, however, do my buttonhole at my collar just yet because I am still thinking about whether I want to risk screwing up my shirt with one buttonhole that doesn't come out right here at the collar because of the shape and the bulk usually associated with the collar stand. Now I did trim down my collar stands and so it is not so bulky, but still I am a little bit fearful of doing my buttonhole at my collar stand. I'll still think about it some more. Now I also went ahead and did my buttonhole on my cuff. You might notice that the buttonhole on my cuff is horizontal and I think this is how it's usually done. I just decided to do mine horizontally. I didn't in fact check the instructions to see what they recommend, but I like my buttonholes horizontally in my cuff and so this is what it looks like. Now before I open up my buttonholes, I do want to seal the fabric using this baby right here, which is Free Check. Again, I highly recommend having this in your stash if you're about to go and sew up some buttonholes. This solution is just magical. It helps to seal in your fabric and stops it from fraying as much, especially if you're using finer fabrics. Before I use my Free Check on my shirt, however, I do want to go ahead and remove all of the markings down my center front just using a damp rag. Now the markings that you can see are in disappearing ink and water soluble ink, depending which color you're looking at. The purple is the disappearing ink. It will fade away after a couple of days. The white is the water soluble ink and that will fade away on contact with water. But before I put my Free Check on, I want to get rid of my marks because I do not want to risk sealing in these marks to my fabric with this solution. Ask me how I know. So just take the time and remove the markings from your plackets and from your cuffs before using your Free Check. Once you put your Free Check on, you want to put it on at the front and at the back, taking care to keep it within the fabric between your buttonhole, and you want to leave it for a little while to set, and then you can grab your buttonhole opener, which looks like this, another invaluable tool in my sewing kit, and this just helps me to open my buttonholes without risking using a seam ripper and then splitting the buttonhole at either end. That is a disaster. With the buttonhole opener, you're simply going to lay it flat on your cutting board and you're going to insert the buttonhole opener right between your line and press, and that will open up your buttonhole. So first remove the markings, then add your Free Check, allow it to set, and then you can go and open up your buttonholes. Now, when my buttonholes have been finished off, sealed and opened, then I can go about placing my buttons. Now to place my buttons, I'm just going to line up my shirt, just like so, making sure my hems line up, and then I'm just going to place a marking in between my open buttonholes, and that will put a marking on the opposite side of my placket. This is going to give me a rough guideline of where my buttons need to be placed. Then I'll go back in, mark in a 1/2 inch from my center front line with my pen, create an intersection as I did with the buttonhole side. Then I will place my button, grab for my magic tape, and I'm going to use my magic tape to hold my button in place like so. Then I can take it to my sewing machine, attach my buttonhole foot, and sew it into place using my buttonhole foot. I hardly ever sew my buttons on manually anymore. The buttonhole foot has been a lifesaver for me. It makes it quicker and easier in my estimation, and so once I finish my buttonholes, I'll go and sew on my buttons, and then we will have a finished shirt. But wait a minute. Wait 1 minute, you guys. Remember very early on in this sew along, I fused my placket to my bodice front using my stitch witchery. I have only now remembered that I did not go back and top stitch my button placket, neither on my buttonhole side or on my button side. So I actually think I'm going to top stitch my placket on either side before I put my buttons on. But once I've done all of that, then we will have completed our shirt. I'll come back and show you what my finished shirt looks like. Alright my loves, that is a wrap on my very first stitch by stitch series featuring the Grainline button down shirt. Now as I said before, if you have missed any of the other parts 1, 2 and 3, I'll leave the links in the description box so that you can run ahead and get all caught up. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and for watching the entire series. I really appreciate your time and your presence. If you have considered using any of my affiliate codes today, if you have shopped them in the past, or you intend to use them in the future, then thank you as well so much for your continued support. My sewing channel thanks you. Now you guys, that is all I needed to share with you today. I look forward to seeing you here on Sunday for episode 1 of Vlogmas. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments section down below and I'll do my best to answer. And again, if you're not yet a subscriber, then do go ahead and subscribe on your way out. So I'll see you back here on Sunday. Peace.